Good evening.
Good evening. I'll let that adjust. Ready to go? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Carol Wilding, and I'm the President and CEO of Toronto Board of Trade, and with me this evening is Vice President Richard Joy. Let me begin by saying that Toronto needs a long-term fiscal plan that will resolve its structural deficit. A solid fiscal plan is the best way to preserve and enhance city services. It's also the best way to create new jobs and attract investment to this great city. We have submitted a 20-page backgrounder with 9 recommendations. And in the next 4 minutes, I'd like to briefly discuss 3 topics. The first is expenditures and the value of forecasting. This 2010 budget includes a 1-year forecast of non-sustainable budget pressures for 2011. Last week, Councillor Carroll said that forecasting was a good exercise because it forced this committee to focus. We agree. Forecasting promotes and provides focus. In our report, The Growing Chasm, we did a forecasting exercise that looked not just 1 year ahead, but 10 years ahead. And we first shared the results of our forecasting exercise with city staff in the first week of January. Let me tell you quickly what we found out. Our research showed that the city's gross expenses have been rising on average 5.9% a year over the last 6 years. But in our forecast, we assumed that expenses would grow at only 5% per year. That particular assumption more than captures the savings you have made in your 2009 collective bargaining agreement. Our forecast also takes into account the full value of uploading, and it factors in future TTC fare increases and property tax increases. And yet, it still forecasts a deficit of $1.2 billion by 2019. With that in mind, your 2010 budget includes a total spending increase of 5.7%. 5.7 is better than 5.9. You are headed in the right direction, but more needs to be done to get expenses under control. I would like to highlight one area you should focus on, the Toronto Transit Commission. TTC spending increased by 9% this year. Our research shows that from 2002 to 2008, the TTC's workforce grew by 12%, while its total kilometres operated grew by only 6%. We also found that TTC's productivity remained at 2003 levels. Had it remained there, the TTC would have saved $71 million in 2008. So the board is calling on Council to direct the Auditor General to conduct an overall audit of the TTC so that the Council and all Torontonians can benefit from an impartial assessment of that institution. My second topic is economic development. After a tough recession, we're now seeing signs of economic recovery, and now is the time to act to bring jobs and investment back to this great city. As Councillor Carroll has noted, despite a difficult budget year, this committee kept its commitment to the city's economic development policy, enhancing Toronto's business climate. This policy calls for any levy increase to be shared 2/3 by residents and 1/3 by business. I commend you for your decision to maintain that commitment. This policy is the single most powerful lever this Council has to attract jobs and new investment. But we urge you to adhere to that policy in both letter and in spirit. Let me remind you what happened last year. Like last year, last year's budget also announced a tax increase of 4% for residents and 1.3% for business. But when the impact of current value assessment was announced, just days before Council's final budget vote, those numbers changed for business. Small businesses actually got a tax cut, which was welcome news. But all other businesses got hit with a substantial increase. That's because $19 million in tax burden was shifted onto the commercial and industrial classes. By the time all was said and done, most businesses in the city opened their property tax bills to find an average increase of nearly 3%. This result, unfortunately, jeopardizes jobs and investment, and we are concerned that it will happen again. It shouldn't. You have options. For example, the region of York recently passed a motion forbidding any further CVA-related tax shifting onto business. We are calling upon Council to pass a similar motion here in Toronto. Renew your commitment with a vote. Keep tax increases no higher than you have announced. And finally, let me speak about transparency. Once again this year, we await the staff report on CVA. It's an essential document with material impacts upon your announced levy increases, but it won't be made available until April 7th. As a result, this Budget Committee will never see it before it goes to a vote of Council. We're concerned about that, and we think that you should be too. This document should have been released alongside the draft budget at the absolute latest, and failing to release it in a timely manner hampers transparency, accountability, and public participation. I will close by once again urging you to adopt a long-term fiscal plan that can preserve and enhance services while sending a clear signal that you are serious about jobs and investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilding. If you want to stay with us at the microphone, I have questions from Council. I have Councillor Perks. Are there any other questions of the Deputant? Councillor Perks?
Thank you. Ms. Wilding, you've suggested that our gross expenditures have been going up by 5.7%. Do you know what our net expenditures have gone up by in that same period?
Yes, but gross expenditures...
Can you tell me, please?
Gross expenditures?
Could you tell me, please? Net. How much our net have gone up?
I think it's more important, Councillor, with all due respect, to start with gross first, because they give you an overall picture. Be happy to talk about net, and on a net basis, we can look at various expenditures.
So would you agree with me that it's been less than half what you've claimed?
Can I just finish?
Sure.
Thank you. On a gross basis, you're looking at your overall spending, and it's important to take an overall picture and look at all of your spending costs. On that basis, the last 6 years, 5.9% average increase. This year, 5.7%. So clearly, we need to look at expenditures on a gross or net. And Councillor, I'd be happy to. We've done some work offline to sit down and go line by line through net. But here's a starting point.
Okay.
9.1% increase in TTC jumps off the page.
Okay, good.
There's a starting point.
I've heard the answer. Perhaps
so
now we
start.
can, since you won't or can't tell me now, maybe I could suggest to you that our net increase on our operating budget has been under 3 during that period, less than half what you've suggested. Maybe to help people who don't know the difference, I could ask you another question. So if someone comes in for a building permit, which we charge for at full cost recovery, our net budget doesn't go up, but our gross budget does. Taxpayers pay nothing. So if you're saying that we should be more concerned with gross and not worry about the fact that our net is not actually climbing even half as fast as what you claimed, are you saying we should tell people don't come in for building permits?
Councillor, whether we talk gross or net, here's the bottom line. A structural deficit. If you spend more money than you take in, it's the pattern. We've seen it. The growing chasm projects it out. We have a problem.
So you do understand. So you're saying that we're spending more than we take in this year?
We're saying we're spending...
We are. You do realize that our budget is balanced this year and we're not spending...
Balanced, Councillor.
I'm going to have to ask for order from the gallery. Yes, but if you'll just allow me 1 second, Ms. Wilding, I do have to ask for order from the gallery. It is the delegate who gets to respond to the councillor. And I have to be strict about that because that is a rule of this council chamber, whether it is council deliberating or the budget committee. It is the delegate who responds to the councillor's question. Thank you.
Balanced but unsustainable. And you yourself and your colleagues in council know that it's unsustainable, and you know that your budget pressure over last year went up 21%. And if we need the information, yes, you're unsustainable. Your overall budget pressures went up. Look at your own budget deck.
As I recall,
wait,
in May of last year, no, just a second.
I
want to make sure we agree on the numbers here.
I
want to make sure we agree on the numbers here.
No, I just want
so
to
last year, at the conclusion of the operating budget, our staff told us that we had a forecasted pressure for this year of over 800 million.
821 million.
And what's it for this year?
Your 2011 outlook?
Yeah.
Your unsustainable portion only. We don't have the total budget pressure. Your unsustainable only is 469. Our
that sounds like less than 800
suggested.
That's less than 800. How do you go from 800 down and call that an increase? Could you tell me?
I'll give you a quick lesson. 821 is comprised of both sustainable and unsustainable. Councillor Carroll would be happy to take you through that as a colleague in the committee. 469 next year represents the unsustainable portion only. The growing chasm talks about 465.
Okay.
But let's get back to your point about the information. We don't have all the information.
Well, actually, you have exactly what we gave you in order to give the 800 number.
We don't have the CDA.
I have another question for you, perhaps. So another example I'm concerned about. If you're saying, you know, that we should pay more attention to the gross than the net.
Please.
Yep, getting there. Every time someone pays a fare on the transit system, our gross budget increases, our gross revenue and expenditure increases, but our net budget actually does not because it's revenue to us. So are you saying that we should tell people not to get on the TTC so that our gross number will look better even though it's our net number, the actual money we charge taxpayers, our net number that matters?